everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Buller Show. Today I have with me Ben Aston. Now, Ben is currently living in Vancouver, but he doesn't have a Canadian accent. He's from the beautiful area of Sussex, which is where he did his first degree. And a little bit about Ben before we leap in Ben launched his first terrible website at the age of 14, so that's about 40 years before I did it. And he was hooked. 20 plus years later, he's still at it, and things are going a bit better. He's a digital project manager, but did a political science degree and an online entrepreneur. He's a founder of Black and White Zebra, an indie media company on a mission to help people and organisations succeed. Ben is also founder of the largest and fastest growing communities for digital project managers, the digitalprojectmanager.com, with 500,000 plus visitors a month and 30,000 subscribers and 4,000 members. Welcome to the show, Ben, and it's great to have you here.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be on the show.
So you are living in a part of the world where you weren't born. You've got obviously I do love the English accent, and generally English have a great sense of humour. So
let's see if that plays out.
We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so you originally went and did a political science degree in Sussex, and but now you're an online entrepreneur. So tell us a bit about how that journey all happened.
Yeah, well, I think I did a year in industry before going to university. I was supposed to be going to Cardiff University to do computer science, but in fact, because I was going to do computer science, I had this opportunity to do a year in industry, and it turned out in my year in industry. So my year in industry, I was working actually for the Ministry of Defence as a web developer, and I realised at that point, actually quite soon in to the year, that I didn't want to spend my entire career sat in front of a computer coding. And so I pressed the abort button or the eject button on the computer science degree and decided, oh, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to go into marketing and communications. I want to talk to people. I don't just want to be sat talking to myself in front of a computer screen. I thought marketing and communications, what do I need? What degree is good for that? Well, anything. So I did politics and international relations. And yeah, that was really the beginning of my journey. But I guess the kind of in parallel with that, from the age of about 14, I was making websites in my spare time. And one of the first websites I created was an online satirical newspaper. It was called Such Times, kind of like a bit like The Onion. And that was kind of my first adventure, my first kind of real adventure in the online world, where I created a bit of a club and made swag and tried to get PR. So I was always kind of involved in the online marketing kind of world, and just took deviated a bit through my university kind of patch before I kind of ended up in advertising actually at the beginning of my career. And the first account I was working on was actually for Stella Artois, a beer client, which for your first client out of university, that's a good one to land.
So I suppose the Friday after work, there was plenty of beer on tap, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about advertising agencies. There seems to be like an unlimited supply of beer, or at least there was in those days. So it was a good client to work for.
Yep. So you discovered early by really accident that you loved, because you end up doing web design for a company as your sort of. It wasn't a gap year. It's before you started university, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. I mean, it was a gap year between high school and university. Yeah. So yeah, it was at that point that I realized that I didn't want to do computer science. But I think right from an early age, I think my early inspiration, I remember doing a project. It was a book review at school, probably, I don't know, when I was 11 or something. And the big book review I chose to do was on Richard Branson. And since reading that book, I can't even remember which Richard Branson book it was, but he has forever been a massive inspiration to me. Reading his stories about, he was at school selling Christmas trees and selling canaries or whatever else was that he was doing. He just found ways to create businesses. And for me, at an early age, that was super inspiring.
Mm. It's fascinating, isn't it, when you come across either books or experiences that change the direction of your life, or take you in a direction you didn't expect it. Like, you could have done all the goal setting and planning, for all the world to see and do, but in reality, it was going out and doing things and reading that really led you to where you are today, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that process of making things and just making something happen, doing something. I think so many people get hung up on whether or not they've got the right idea or not. They want to start a business, they want to be an entrepreneur, but they're not quite sure what to do, so they don't do anything. And I think that's the worst possible thing to do. Whereas if you do something will come of it. It's just a matter of what.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. A lot of people, a lot of people are perfectionists, and want to get it just right. So they want to get the plan just right. The reality is that the plans we make often don't work out at all. How can you predict the future? That's essentially what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And what you said too regarding just going and doing something, I find is really, really important. There's magic in the motion, and for me too, I've mentioned it before in past podcasts, but I was a teacher and hated what I was doing. Yes, I had a degree, so I got my degree. Yours was political science, mine was a teaching degree, BA, and I did a bit of theology along the way as part of that BA. But for me, I went and tried I discovered I love sales, so then I went and tried 3 different types of sales jobs, and one happened to be in the tech industry, which I went, wow, there's something going on here. And my life has never been the same since. So, all right, so let's go forward a little bit to you did your science degree, then you moved on and did another degree in Hong Kong. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that was my kind of final year at university. So that was just a semester abroad that I did in Hong Kong, which is where I happened to meet my wife, which is why I now live in Vancouver in Canada. So that was kind of the circuitous route that I took along the way.
Yeah.
And but it was after university that I began my career in advertising, and then and that's where I was. My goal really in my, I guess, young 20s was to climb that corporate ladder in the advertising world.
Yep.
And that's what I did for 10 years. Well, in fact, it was more than that, but I was in the world of advertising and marketing within digital. But I kind of just focused on learning the trade, learning the craft, and really with all around me in the world of advertising, people were kind of doing things on the side. And for me, that was super interesting. I was constantly inspired by people's ideas and their side hustles that they had going on. And so I kind of saw it as a great preparation and training ground for whatever was next. I wasn't quite sure what it was. Probably at that point, I thought maybe I'll start my own agency. But I was just there to absorb and be around creative, smart people doing interesting things, which is what we were doing in the world of advertising. We're helping sell things. We're helping communicate things clearly, and just being amongst designers and developers, creative people, strategists is a great place to be for someone who loves ideas and making things happen.
Yeah. And I do like the term side hustle. And I think a lot of people do have ideas, and some act on them and some don't. So one of the things that caught my eye when we first communicating is that one of your ideas was bootstrapping a side hustle to a $3 million annual run rate business. So what was the side hustle, and how did that all start?
Yeah, so it was actually when I made the move from the UK to Canada, and I figured, hey, I'm going to be in a new city with no friends. I'm not going to know anyone. This was back in 2012. So I thought, okay, well, my plan for the year was I want to make 12 websites in 2012. That was kind of my big goal.
Okay.
So I got to, this was the first one I tried. So it was called the digitalprojectmanager.com. And That was the first website I created and started. And the idea for that was that I was going to create an ebook and sell an ebook online. That was it. I'd write a book, I'd sell it online, and I never actually got round to finishing the book. That's still a work in progress. But what I did do was create a whole ton of blog posts, because I thought, well, who am I going to sell my book to? I've got no audience. So I thought, well, I'll drip feed this book over the course of the year, so that by the end of the year, there's some people who might want to buy it. That was the plan. And yeah, as I said, never finished the book, but what I created instead was a website that's become a platform. We now monetize through membership. So we have an online subscription, we have online training, and we have advertising as well. So it's taken, I started at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012. So we've nearly been going for 10 years. And now we're at the point where we're generating upwards of 3 million a year, which is great from something which started for the first, from 2011 to 2018, I still had a full-time job. So this was something I was doing in the evenings, at the weekends, whatever spare time I had, I'd be hustling to try and build something. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of been the journey.
So you've only gone full-time since 2018, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So one of the sort of emerging business models that's happened, especially in the last 10 years, it's been around forever, but it's certainly become much more to promise, is a subscription model.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about, and obviously that's for the digitalprojectmanager.com business. So tell us a bit about how you make that work, and what value to add, and then some of the challenges you have. Like there's obviously issues with churn. There's issues with churn. There's the issues with onboarding. So tell us a bit about how the idea of subscription came to you. What was the inspiration, and then both the challenges and the opportunities.
So the idea for membership really came out of just looking at the data and looking at the analytics from the website and seeing, okay, well, what are people interested in? And what people were consistently interested in were the templates that we provided. They wanted a template for project kickoff meetings, or they wanted a template for an estimate, or whatever it might be. We had a whole ton of great content and a whole bunch of templates. And so I thought, well, why don't I charge people for this? And so we thought, well, let's start paywalling some of the content, and so making it kind of members only access. We know people are searching for this stuff. We know that this is what they're looking for. It gets downloaded a lot, so maybe people are willing to pay for it. So we created this subscription, which is all about access to resources and basically paywalling our most popular content.
Right.
So we tried that, and our membership now has been running for it's about 18 months or so. And the impact of what we did was, yes, it creates short-term revenue. So people are willing to pay for access to things that they want. But like you said, you mentioned churn rate, and that's absolutely our problem with that model. It's forcing people into membership because they want access to a certain resource. Doesn't mean that they're someone who's willing to pay month after month access to these resources. So what we have found over the past year is, our subscription rate's really high, but also our churn rate is really high. And so that's why we've begun to pivot the business model and actually the entire membership offering to try and accommodate for that a bit better.
So what's the current monthly subscription and annual subscription that you're charging for, access to premium content resources?
So we've actually just scrapped our monthly membership. So this kind of comes back to our pivot that we've just done, realizing that what we don't want people to sign up for monthly membership and churn after month 3, because it's not worth it. So the monthly membership was $15, the annual membership $150. But what we've done now is, just scrapped our monthly membership altogether. And we're pivoting our whole membership model to be less around access to resources and more about being part of a community. And the idea is, well, if you just want access to resources, if you just want a template, then we'll sell you a template. You can just pay $10, get your template and leave. But actually, if you're looking to develop in your career, if you want to be part of a community, if you want support, if you want accountability, if you want to grow, then you need to be part of a community. And this is a long-term investment. You're not going to get the value out of it within 3 months. So we need people to stay in membership for longer, which is why currently the only offering we have is an annual membership, which is priced at $150. But it means that people have, they've made a bigger commitment, and so that they're willing to make more effort in giving to the community, but also receiving from it.
Great. That's fascinating insights. Now, the other thing I'm curious about is, okay, so you got to get people to stump up $150. So tell us a little bit about how your funnel works to get them to do that, because obviously you've got to create, trust. You've got to create credibility. Do you start with any small commitments? And so how would you describe? So give us a bit of an overview of your funnel to get people to sign up. I'm curious about that.
I think there's, we haven't really created a funnel in the classic marketing way of, there are some funnels that I'll mention, but essentially what we're doing is it's a brand experience that we're offering and providing to people. The brand experience includes our podcast, and that provides and helps build credibility. People can hear what we're talking about. There's believe and trust us that we know what we're doing. And the podcast is completely free. The content on our website, most of the content is completely free. So that's where trust is built. And we know that there are certain trigger points which help people decide that membership is a good option for them. Things like people getting a new job, things like people looking to upgrade their resume or find a new job. So there are certain points in people's career, maybe where they've got a promotion or they've got a review coming up. There's certain points in a digital project manager's kind of career where they suddenly think, oh, maybe I do need some accountability. Maybe I do need some support. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And so we've created a lot of content around those kind of topics, so that people who are searching for it find our website. And then from there, we have promos within the article itself saying, hey, if you want to be part of a community, come and join us. So it's a very short funnel, but we're trying to create content around that obvious user intent where a solution like our membership might be helpful. So that's kind of one. There's the brand building piece, there's the content. And then with our email, also within our website, what we do is when someone becomes a subscriber to the website, we introduce to them some of our content. We find out who they are by what they click on and what they're interested in, and begin educating them on what we offer. And as part of that journey, we introduce them to membership. Now, we used to, as part of our funnel, it used to be that we offered people a 2-week trial, but we found that 2 weeks isn't enough for someone to get the value out of membership. It's not enough time. And so actually the number of people that signed up through that free trial, and then the people that unsubscribed because they didn't make use of it, was too high. So it just wasn't worth doing, and it created administration for us as well. So what we're trying to do as much as possible is look at the numbers, see if things are working. If they're not working, get rid of them and try something else. And this game of experimentation is something that's always ongoing.
That's fascinating. So you're breaking some of the mores and current practices that are being recommended by a lot of people. But there's no one easy answer, is there, depending on the community? You've just got to keep trying different things, don't you? It's a constant regime of testing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think so often, we can kind of fall into the trap of thinking, hey, this guru, is clearly really good at something. Therefore, the advice that they're giving must be right. And it might be right for certain instances, but it will always depend. And I think what we need to have confidence as entrepreneurs is we know actually better than anyone else our audience. We have the insights that they don't have. And there's not a one size fits all approach to things. And to think that you can just, and you see this advertised all over Facebook all the time. It's like, grab my playbook, grab my swipe files, as though you could, it was just a simple recipe that you could follow and just success will just come out the oven 10 days later. Like it's just not that simple.
No.
And I think for me, whenever I have tried following those things, or even engaging with some so-called experts at certain things, and they apply their learnings and their best practice thinking that it'll work, and I think it'll work, but it turns out it doesn't work because they've missed a key component or insight that means that their whole strategy, their plan is not very effective. So yeah, my experience has been as an entrepreneur, as someone who knows the business, knows the audience, we kind of have a gut sense on things, and that gut sense is really powerful, and we should rely on it.
Yeah. And I suppose you test that gut instinct through the testing and see what works and what doesn't.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you're obviously creating content that solves pain points, such as going for a job interview. In other words, you're providing the answers and tips and frameworks for people, which is great. Now, I came across a really interesting insight regarding creating content, and it was not just go and create content, but record what you do and what works, and then create a framework from it. In other words, the content comes out of recording your processes and then putting them into a framework, which I thought was, I hadn't heard, look, we maybe have thought about it, but I really like the reframing of the content creation was record and create. So the recording becomes the creation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the things that we focus on is, obviously a huge part of what we're doing is creating content. And as time has kind of gone by, we've become more sophisticated at the way that we plan content and write content and create content to make sure that it works. And I think so often, we hear things like content is king. And so we're like, okay, right. Yeah, let's produce loads of content because everyone says that's king, but not necessarily basing that on insights on maybe what is ranking on our website already, or what content or topic clusters do we have already? What can we build upon? And then how does that relate to what people are actually searching for? And I think using tools like Ahrefs, which is a super powerful tool, using tools like Clearscope and Market Muse to optimize and write content about the right things. These are all, I want to create content that I know is going to rank and is going to do something, and that matches a really specific user intent. Because if we don't, we end up creating a whole ton of work for ourselves, publishing content, and it doesn't do anything. So there is a case for creating more, passion-based content. And so for each of our websites, we typically have a podcast where we kind of blur the lines of content a bit more. Mm-hmm. But for our written content and for our video content, we're very focused on, okay, well, let's create stuff that people actually want to view, or stuff that they actually want to read about.
Mm. That's the whole content. You and I have both been playing content creation for a long time. I started content creation in 2009 when I launched jeffbullis.com, and but today there is so much content, and that's the challenge for all of us. And so that requires us to think more strategically, doesn't it, regarding what we create and what media we use as well. And certainly for me, the podcast has been a great focus point, because we create video, audio, and text content out of this, and then we cut it up into snippets. And the other challenge coming down the line is content being created by robots and AI. I've had a few conversations with both colleagues and people I've interviewed about the role of AI in content creation, and The places like Forbes and so on are all creating news content using AI and robots now. Um, so I think watch this space over the next decade, because that's going to be the other challenge we have as content creators, is we're battling just mega content creators that are using incredibly powerful tools.
Yeah.
The other question I want to ask you was, when you, I'm curious about the onboarding process, because I've heard that in terms of minimizing churn, the onboarding process is really, really important. So can you tell me a bit about how you guys onboard?
Yeah, it's something that we have evolved, yeah, as our membership has grown, and really yeah, the point of onboarding is to make people feel, and when we talked about this earlier, like get some momentum early and build on that momentum. So we want people to feel like, hey, they've won, that they've got value out of it, that this is easy, that this is fun. So our onboarding process is partly education, it's partly introducing people to the various different parts of the membership that we offer. It's giving them kind of heads up on events that are coming up. But what we're trying to do in that early onboarding phase is identify, okay, well, what are the things that people actually clicked on? What type of resources are they interested in? What level or what stage in their career are they at? And we're looking at the content that they're using, and then tailoring the journey based on how they interact. So we're creating dynamic flows for users dependent on what they're interested in. And I think that's super important, as is getting them engaged in the community. So I talked about how we're trying to make this transition from being a resource-based community to more of a community that's built around a shared passion. And so we're trying to get people involved and engaged in our community, our forum, as quickly as possible, and showing them and kind of holding their hand to get through those kind of first hurdles by showing them some really interesting content that might be relevant to them, by helping them create their profile, by showcasing some of our most interesting and trending content. So these are all things we're trying to provide value early, get them engaged and get some momentum in place so that they stick around.
So maybe I can sum it up in a couple of ways. Number one, you're under promising and over delivering in terms of when you onboard them, bring them on, you are delivering more than they're expecting.
Yeah, definitely.
And then also you're also delivering content through different streams that is relevant to them as an individual, not just one size fits all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I think in our instance, we have people at different stages of their career. There's different pain points that we have as digital project managers, and we're trying to identify, okay, what's this person's pain point right now, and then how can we address that? So we're trying to do that as dynamically as possible, based on the things that they're interested in and the things that they're clicking on.
That's yeah, and I think it's trying to cover pain points, isn't it? The other thing that I think you mentioned, which I think is incredibly relevant, is it sounds like for me you're not trying to sell a product or resources. You're more trying to create a movement around a common passion.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's yeah, it has a whole lot more longevity in terms of building a business that is going to be around a decade from now. The products that we create, the courses that we make will be obsolete. But if we can create successfully a community of people who have a shared passion, who are engaged, then they'll still be around in a decade. And I think building a community is really hard work. And I think the mistake that you might make after listening from this is, oh yeah, let's build a community. That sounds easy. It's super, super difficult. Trying to get people to engage is really, really hard. But hard things are normally worth doing. So I think often we default to the kind of easy option, which might produce some kind of short-term fruit. But yeah, investing in something, building something for the long term growing things more slowly is less attractive in our startup world that we used to, where we're trying to create unicorns. We're trying to get that hockey stick growth. Well, actually, if you embrace the fact that you're not building that kind of a business, but you're building something that will be around in 10 years time and going slowly, going more sustainably, then I think you can have more fun on the way and take the pressure off yourself to get instant results. So I think there's a word, just a word of caution there, really.
I really like that. In other words, you're playing the long game.
Yeah, definitely.
And because you can get into this frantic sort of startup world where everyone burn the bridges, work 26 hours a day, wake up before you actually go to sleep. It's just crazy, and I think that's the quickest way to just burn out and blow up quite often. Excuse me. So the area. So what I was going to say, I forgot a little bit something I was going to say here. So you've had to change your business model. So you're in the middle of testing that now. Where do you see your community and your movement going from now?
Yeah, so we've grown the community now to about 800 paying members right now, in the course of about 18 months, which is great. I'm happy with that growth. I think there's a ceiling actually to the size of the community that we can have and it still be rich and engaging. So there's a bit of a cap on that. So what we're trying to do now is actually launch other communities in other disciplines as well. So we've created a site for product managers called theproductmanager.com, one for e-commerce called the ecommanager.com, one called people managing people, which is kind of HR related. Mm-hmm. And one called the QA lead, which is all about quality assurance and quality engineering. So we've launched, the way that we're scaling is by building communities in other disciplines and other niches as well. So that's as we're, the digital project managers are flagship, and as things work and as things are successful and we hypothesize and we test and we learn and we optimize, once we get to that point where we think we know what we're doing, we then roll it out in these other platforms on these other sites. So we're actually this year about to embark on a project to unify the sites together under one platform so that we can more easily publish and share content and really get some of those efficiencies of scale. But yeah, that's what we're doing. We're growing new communities.
So any of those are starting to get traction, or is it just still early days in terms of you testing all those different niches?
Yeah, so there's two that these new sites have been going for about a year, and two of them are kind of are beginning to do well. So people managing people and the QA lead are both in a really good spot where we are beginning to build the wait list for people to join the community. They've both got thriving podcasts with a good following. We're collaborating with lots of different people on those sites and in those communities. So those two are showing a lot of early promise. And yeah, it's exciting to see a model developed, a process initiated, and then following that process and seeing what happens.
Okay, well, so you're taking a framework that's worked for you. In other words, you have recorded what works for you, building a community, and you're then rolling that into different niches to see how that works, that framework. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The other challenge I certainly find with content and online courses, and this will be my last question, and then I'll just ask you to share sort of some insights about being an online entrepreneur and some, tips that you can leave with our audience. So how do you find and we all know in this fast moving world, despite us trying to go slowly in a fast moving world playing the long game, how do you find keeping your content relevant so it doesn't age? Because you create an online course, let's say you created something for Facebook, advertising, training, it's going to be almost out of date next month.
Yeah.
How do you go about keeping your content and training relevant and up to date?
Yeah, it is super difficult. But we've been quite intentional right at the beginning in focusing less on the tools and more on the kind of higher level frameworks and theory that you can apply that stay relevant, 1 year to the next. So I think, if we were creating courses on, how to, run your next Facebook campaign, and, Facebook changes its interface every second week, we'd find it super difficult. But by our overriding kind of principles for content is to make it evergreen. How can we create something that, we can come back to an update next year, but isn't going to require rewriting? Because what we want to do is not have a churn of content. We don't want to be a news site. We want to create stuff that's evergreen, that will be relevant next year, as relevant next year as it is this year, maybe with a new section on something. So we try and steer clear of ephemeral content and try and find those evergreen areas that we can write about.
Yeah, so you're really trying to create content around principle-based evergreen training that is hopefully going to be relevant in the next 5 to 10 years, and it's a real challenge to do that. So, excuse me, just to finish up, Ben, I know your time's valuable, and we spent a few minutes getting the tech right on this. From cameras not working to microphones not working to anyway, we got there in the end. Hopefully the sound's good. So just to finish up, what are some tips you could leave with our listeners regarding being an entrepreneur in a digital world, and especially you're building community? What are some 2 or 3 things that you think you've learnt that you'd love to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think probably the most relevant thing to anyone starting, or maybe for someone who's side hustling at the moment. I think one of my regrets is not leaving my full-time job earlier and waiting so long. I'm not really sure why I waited so long, other than I just had the comfort of a full-time job to fall back on. So if you're thinking about making a jump, make the jump is something that I would recommend. And I think one of the really important things that was impactful was my first hire, and then every subsequent hire after that. And I think sometimes we can be reticent to hire when we think, we're adding overhead. But my experience has been, particularly if you've got management experience already, hiring great people who are better than you is going to really help you grow your business faster. And there's no way that we would have grown the way we have if I hadn't hired really great people. So build that team as early as you can. Make sure that you're not settling for kind of B grade candidates, but hire the best people you possibly can and build the team that is going to help take you to where you want to go. And then I think it really comes down to, and we've been talking about this a lot today, I'm a massive fan of things being good enough. If it's good enough, ship it, and then build things, test, and then learn from it. I think all too often we get caught up in perfection, as we talked about, and it's our concept or our idea of perfection, which doesn't always play out in the real world at all. We can spend hours laboring over something and we might be creating the wrong thing altogether. So I'm a big fan of building things, testing and learning once something is good enough to test, rather than creating perfect things. That way you're able to see if something works and pivot much more quickly. So build a great team, leave your job, and start testing things. Don't just assume you know.
I think those 3 points are great, Ben, and I do love the one, just ship it. And I think that's a Seth Godin quote, possibly. I'm trying to remember, but just ship it, because you don't know what you don't know, and until you ship it, you don't know if it's going to work or not. So you could build a ship that's got all the bells and whistles, or let's just ship this feature and let's see if it works. And you're going, oh my God, I didn't think that was going to work. So thank you very much for your insights and wisdom, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and look forward to catching up in real time in one of my favourite cities on the planet, in Vancouver. So look forward to having a beer sometime in Vancouver when the dust has settled and the rain stopped.
Yeah. We see you in the summer then. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.